In the cemetery of Lafayette, Colorado, there's a grave marker with scrawled writing in a very simplistic design made out of concrete. It marks the final resting place of Theodore Glava, often anglicized as Theodore, who, according to local lore, was a vampire. It's said that shortly after Glava was buried, the townspeople became suspicious that he was rising from his grave and dug him up. They found elongated fangs and blood in his mouth, and sharp claw-like fingernails. A stake was driven into his heart, and his grave was refilled. Over time, the stake in his heart grew into a tree that now protrudes from the site, and his sharp, bloody fingernails became the thorns and red petals of the rose bushes that now grow around his grave. To this day, there are stories from locals of sightings of a tall, black figure standing by the grave at night, and people being pushed or attacked by invisible forces when passing by the cemetery. So, is there a vampire buried in Lafayette, Colorado?
The answer is no.
We don't know much about the man whose grave is now the source of a popular local legend, but what we do know doesn't point towards anything supernatural or occult. He was born in Lesnik, a town in Transylvania, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, in 1877. He immigrated to America in 1914, arriving at Ellis Island. He had a wife, Sophia, and a daughter, Victoria, back home in Romania that he was hoping to provide for. He moved to Lafayette and worked in the Simpson coal mine. He died on December 3rd, 1918, from the Spanish flu after being sick for 2 weeks and showing signs of a brief recovery. He was 41 years old. The grave marker is actually shared with a fellow Romanian immigrant, John Trandafir, who died just days apart from Glava, also from Spanish flu. The marker sits in the middle of the actual graves of the two, with Glava on the right and Trandafir on the left. The two were unrelated, but they likely knew each other. It was one of Trandafir's friends, George Lazar, another local, who paid for the funeral services and made the headstone out of poured concrete. The extra details to Trandafir's grave marker give the impression that Lazar knew him better. The two men are buried in the pauper section of the cemetery, which, in addition to the modest marker, might suggest that the men were impoverished at the time of their deaths, but they actually both died with a fair bit of money. Glava's estate had $2,028 in it, comprised of cash, war bonds, and savings certificates, which would amount to over $40,000 today. It was deposited in a Romanian bank for his wife and daughter. There's no record of a torch-bearing mob ever digging up Glava's grave or driving a stake through his heart. Though there's many trees in the cemetery, including one near the feet of the two Romanian men, it doesn't grow over Glava's grave, where his heart would be. There aren't any rose bushes growing over the plot now, and when there was, the petals were apparently yellow, not red. The legend of the Lafayette vampire grave does stretch back over generations, and it's known to many of the old-timers in the town. But it didn't seem to first enter local lore until the middle of the 20th century, decades after Glava's death. Why it took hold then isn't certain. Maybe it was just culturally the right time, as Universal's Bela Lugosi movies were being rerun on TV, and the Hammer Dracula films with Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were popular in theaters. Why Glava's grave in particular became the one associated with the story also isn't clear, especially when there were other Romanian immigrants buried in the same cemetery. Perhaps it's simply because his marker has the location Transylvania written on it, the legendary home of vampires. Today, trinkets, toys, flowers, and coins are left by tourists who come to see the apparent grave of the Colorado vampire. It has all the things that great local urban legends are made of, all connected to the modest monument of a Romanian immigrant who was just looking for a better life for his family.